in case you can see connections. But I would love now to welcome Dr. Bernard Zaleja to talk to us about the spiritual, theological approach to, I think, perhaps a critical one to creation care. So, or at least just an exploratory one about creation care. So thank you so much, Dr. Zaleja.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Let me first thank Professor Valiente Neighbors for inviting me to present on this panel, and my thanks to other members of the panel and our Zoom visitors so early on this Friday morning. I have retitled my talk this morning, Anti-Environmental Evangelical Theology as Cognitive Quicksand. But don't worry, I'll still be talking about earth-denigrating apocalypticism common in many, perhaps most, evangelical congregations. If sociology as a discipline has any one overarching insight, it is that there seems to be no upper limit to what a particular person or group of persons will believe if someone else simply has the temerity to simply say it. There might be some outer boundary to the believable, but I don't think social science has yet discovered such a boundary. And as William and Dorothy Thomas taught us nearly a century ago in their now famous theorem, if people define situations as real, they are real in their consequences. Beliefs become a real internal reality, and these beliefs are acted upon. Indeed, they can become a totalizing framework dictating the whole life course of members of particular human communities, which in turn may affect literally everyone else. After a 17-year career as an environmental litigator, I returned in 2009 to grad school in sociology and environmental studies at UC Santa Cruz, along with Professor Valiente Neighbors and our other cohort mates. For my dissertation, I studied the policy consequences and political effects of people's religious ideas on environmental values, and even more importantly, environmental behaviors. I did this through field work in both conservative and progressive Christian churches in both California and Arizona. My findings regarding progressive Christian congregations are important to our current environmental crises, but today I am limiting myself to my experiences and findings within Calvary Chapel congregations, a confederation of independent churches, the first of which was founded by Chuck Smith in the mid-60s in Costa Mesa, California, and which is now a global conservative evangelical movement. I conducted several focus groups, conducted a number of key person interviews, pastors and the like, and mostly just went to church every Sunday for about 4 years, starting in 2014, but most intensively from May 16 to just before my graduation in June 2018. And between Sundays, listening to countless sermons of Calvary Chapel pastors, thanks to their practice of creating massive online archives of their sermons. For example, one of my study subjects, Jack Hibbs, has an online archive of every sermon he has given since the beginning of his church in his living room in 1990. Since then, he has grown to megachurch status in Southern California's Chino Hills, where he preaches to 3 separate services on Sundays, each attended by about 2,000 congregants, and then an audience of about 1,500 people on Wednesday nights. These were confirmed both by my estimates when attending Sunday and Wednesday services and by Hibbs himself when I interviewed him. He is now a big player in Republican politics, both nationally and in California. He immediately turned his Wednesday night service into a night of thanksgiving to God for the miraculous divine intervention that had caused the election of Donald Trump 14 hours after his surprise win. He was part of Trump's Evangelical Advisory Board during his presidency. By pure happenstance, my period of most intense field research corresponded to the rise of Donald Trump, both as a candidate and then the first year and a half of his presidency. Political scientists and demographic researchers have established that 77% of white evangelicals voted for Trump in 2016, and that support increased to 84% in 2020. But why? Today, I'm looking at one small piece of that. The anti-environmental hostility of American evangelicals is well known and has been widely studied. I'll simply mention here my and Andrew Saw's 2015 article in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Why Conservative Christians Don't Believe in Climate Change, and the comprehensive literature review of social science research from the mid-'80s to 2016 that I conducted with Professors Braun Taylor and Gretel Van Wieren, published in the Journal for the Study of Religion, Nature, and Culture, and in Conservation Biology. Please message me if you are interested in links to either. There is an American hymn written in 1938 during the Depression called "This World Is Not My Home." I want to play a quick clip of this song being performed by infamous Pentecostal TV evangelist Jimmy Swaggart, a man perhaps most well known for being caught in a motel room with a sex worker in 1988, and then again in 1991 in Indio, California, when his car was pulled over by law enforcement. Here's the first minute of that hymn, and I'm going to share my screen now.
Well, this world is not my home. Oh, I'm just a passing through. Oh, my treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. Well, the angels beckon to heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Help me a little bit, Bob, on this verse one more time.
So that's a clip from this song. This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. I found this sentiment expressed repeatedly, both by pastors and parishioners. Interestingly, when I asked, no one had heard of the 1938 song, but the message has been deeply internalized. Jack Hibbs has used the exact words, "This world is not my home," in his sermons, explaining why evangelicals should not be concerned about environmental issues beyond not littering. Both Hibbs and another pastor in Scotts Valley assured me they did not engage in littering. As Californians, you know that recently we had a gubernatorial recall effort, and Hibbs led the evangelical effort for Larry Elder, who Hibbs has secretly baptized during the campaign. The day after the election and Gavin Newsom's overwhelming victory, Hibbs made some brief comments, and then an assistant pastor, Shadrach Means, stood in for Hibbs to conduct the Wednesday night service. Here's a 2.5-minute clip of that night.
Hey, you guys, Lisa and I had planned to be away this week to take a break and take a rest, and thinking that and praying like all of you that we'd have a victory with the removal of Gavin Newsom and that Larry Elder would win as being governor. And of course, the Lord had something completely different in mind. I want to encourage all of you. Number one is that we all did the right thing. Those of us who participated in the process of our republic. That is, we signed the recall petitions, and then we voted. And yes, I'm hearing from so many people regarding what are we going to call election dynamics, to say the least. But here's the bottom line. We do our best, we do righteousness, and we leave the outcome to the Lord. So don't be discouraged. Don't be down about it. We don't operate that way. That's not how we live as believers. We do our best, we do what honors God, and then we leave the outcome to him.
So with all that's going on, I was just preparing and thinking, Lord, what would you say to your people tonight? And I thought, what a precarious place for me to be on a day like today. After, I know I went to bed, I was getting texts at 8:20 saying the race had been called. And I was like, insane. No way, I'm sorry. 8:30 is much better. But 8:20 was way too early. So anyways, you go to bed thinking, you never know, it could change. And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, it's still the same. So I thought, wow, what a responsibility, what a privilege, what an honor to be here with you guys tonight, to get into God's word. And I think tonight that the Lord's going to remind us that this earth is not our home. And so like Pastor Jack said, we do what's right, but this isn't our home. And we're occupying until he comes. We're being salt and light. We're a city set on a hill that can't be hidden. But until Jesus comes back, we're going to keep moving forward. But we also realize at the same time, he could come at any moment and we'll be out of here. Amen?
So that was the day after the recall. So there you have another example. Pastor Mean says, this earth is not our home. Jesus could come at any moment and we'll be out of here. Amen? There is, you may notice, an internal contradiction. Calvary Chapelers are not just waiting passively for the apocalypse and rapture. Here, the whole church has been politically involved to remove Gavin Newsom. And a quick sampling of Hibbs' many other sermons leaves no doubt as to why. While they wait for Jesus, they very much want to install a conservative theocratic government where they can use the levers of state power to bend the larger culture to their will. I want to share some excerpts from a focus group at a Calvary Chapel in Mesa, Arizona, that I conducted in May 2017, which I have combined together into a quote that further illustrates this mindset. Each sentence is a direct quote. This world is winding down. Christ is coming back. This is going to happen. It's biblical. So I'm not going to turn around and get caught up in global warming. If we're worrying about global warming, we're not worried about someone here that needs saving from hell. We have different priorities. Climate and environmental concern doesn't belong in the church. It's not in the Bible. It's not to be taught. It shouldn't be here. It doesn't belong here. Our truth is what's in the Bible, and if it's not in the Bible, it shouldn't be taught in church. This captures the essence of the Calvary Chapel mindset. I never heard a church member express any concern of the environment in general or climate change in particular. The few times environmentalists came up, it was to mock them. What concerns them instead? Saving people from hell. The centrality of this concern was new to me. I was raised as a Seventh-day Adventist, a fundamentalist denomination that denies evolutionary science, believes in a literal creation a mere 6,000 years ago, is very hostile to LGBTQ rights, all positions that fit right in with Calvary Chapelers. But, and this is a big but, they don't believe and an eternal hellfire. Instead, Judgment Day will impose oblivion on the wicked, but not eternal torture. The founding prophetess of Adventism regarded eternal hellfire as incompatible with a loving God and therefore could not be true. Given this background, it took me a while to fully recognize just how central this idea was for chapelers. I finally realized that one Wednesday night at a church potluck before the Wednesday service, when I overheard the assistant pastor, Bill Bjorkman, break down in tears, declaring, "People go to hell every day. They have a heart attack or a stroke or die in a car accident, and suddenly they're in hell and will be there for eternity. Saving people from this fate is really our only job. It's all that matters." Try telling this pastor that climate change matters. Recall Pastor Means' remark after the failure of the recall. "This earth is not our home. Jesus could come at any moment and we'll be out of here." There are other concepts that circulate among evangelicals that also suppress environmental concern, and I have detailed them elsewhere. But this is the big one. Jesus could come at any moment and take us to our true, glorious, and final home. Worry about this bad and temporary way station isn't just misplaced, it's tragic and ultimately sinful. Worry about this planet shows you do not trust in God's promised imminent return. Such lack of faith puts one at risk of the eternal torment God has prepared for the unfaithful. Theological ideas like these serve as a cognitive quicksand that leave evangelicals stuck in place and incapable of rising to their moral responsibilities as global environmental citizens. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Zaleha. I would love for folks to ask questions or ask follow-ups. I'll give a moment for questions to come in through the chat box, or Evan or Dr. Ortiz, would you like to follow up as well?
I've included clips, those two clips that I shared during my presentation. I've included links to them in case you want to drink them in a little bit more.
Yeah. I see. Thank you for those links. Well, I certainly have questions, but again, I would love to, I see, there you go, from Cameron, who has asked, and I don't know if you could see this on your screen, Dr. Zaleha, but how does this analysis compare to other mainstream religions?
I'm going to assume that what he means by mainstream religions, sociologists of religion in the American context tend to break American Christianity into three groups: Catholics, mainline to liberal Protestant denominations, and mainline to conservative denominations. And Calvary Chapel would be in the mainline to conservative Protestant, kind of at the far right end of that category. Mainline denominations. So just briefly, the other half of my dissertation research was looking at congregations that associate with an organization called the Center for Progressive Christianity. And they now mostly just fly under the banner of their URL, which is simply Progressive Christianity, all one word, .org. And so when I wasn't at Calvary Chapels, I was at churches affiliated with this, some would say far left version of American Christianity. Totally different story there. The environmental concern is often presented, often mentioned in sermons. It often would come up when I would, attend potlucks at, churches like Peace United Church of Christ here in Santa Cruz. in those congregations, the idea that there is such a thing as Christian atheism is not an oxymoron. A number of members of congregations will see themselves as Christian atheists that don't believe in the supernatural, but that very much see themselves as devoted to the historical teaching sage of Galilee that was around 2,000 years ago. And so, totally different. However, when you step back into what you might call the larger mass of mainstream Protestantism, those congregations often, they don't have unity of theological views. And they've learned how to tolerate within their communities everything from the extreme fundamentalism that you'll find at a Calvary Chapel, all the way up to and including the Christian atheists in the same congregation. And so the thing that limits, I saw one example in Redlands, California, United Church of Christ in Redlands, that centered their whole kind of social outreach project on environmental concern. But that was a one-year time. And by and large, given the incredible pressures, social injustice pressures that our contemporary moment are presenting via Black Lives Matter, attacks on LGBT people and trans people, these congregations tend to focus their activism on these social justice issues. They pay quite a bit of lip service to the environmental issues, but frankly, there isn't that much activity on it. So that's a little bit of a long-winded answer of how do these compare with other segments of American Christianity.
Thank you again. Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, if you see it in the chat box, Cameron says, awesome, thank you. I actually wanted to follow up. Was your research more of like an ethnography, like institutional ethnography or participant observation? And I also wanted to ask, what was the age range of the people that perhaps you chatted with? Because I seem to find that among the younger generations, there is like the belief in, at least, right? It doesn't mean that they would do anything, but if they're, just that.
So if we look at the quick first answer is basically my whole dissertation was both, a historical presentation of American history, American Christianity's history over the last couple hundred years. It was ethnographic. It was participant observation, and it was content analysis. All those online sermons that I watched. Interestingly, and unfortunate for me as a researcher, the liberal mainline congregations, they don't post their sermons. So there isn't this massive archive that is present in pretty much every Calvary Chapel that I visited. I could go back and in looking, there are certain Bible verses, and in my longer lectures that are where I'm talking for 40 minutes to an hour, I go into what are the key touchstone Bible verses that really form the foundation of Christian ideas about the environment. But I could, at Calvary Chapel, I could say, I want to find a sermon on Romans 1:25, which is the passage that conservative Christians hold up as why the environment doesn't matter. It's a key touchstone. And I want to find a sermon about Romans 1:25. And I could go to various Calvary Chapel's online sermon database and look up, hey, where was the preacher preaching on Romans 1? I can't do that with liberal pastors because they just don't post their sermons. They don't see it as an important thing. Whereas in the outreach, their ministry of outreach, posting online sermons is very much part of how a strategy that they employ in what they see as their primary mission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'd love to have we have time for perhaps one more question from the audience, or Evan or Dr. Roberto Ortiz, would you like to ask a question as well, or perhaps, give some, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out about the time. Yeah, there you go.
No, I think there's one by the audience. So if I already.
I read the one that was in the chat box already. Let me see. Okay.
Sorry, maybe that was that.
It's in the Q&A question. It's from Taylor.
Oh, could you read that to me? Oh.
Yeah, I can read it.
I'm missing it.
Did you see any correlation between conservative Christians' environmental beliefs and their beliefs on missionary work?
Well, I think that, their emphasis on, I could talk at length about this, but one of the things that I found interesting that and I found several Calvary Chapel pastors conveying this message, because they have this problem. The overwhelming majority of humans over history are destined for hell. They're for this place of eternal torture. Yet they want to imagine that their God is loving and good and kind. And how do you reconcile those two? And one of the answers that they have come up is to say every single human being upon birth throughout history has already known about Jesus and knows that he is God and knows that it's every human's duty to follow Jesus. Therefore, there is no incompatibility. Everybody, just as a genetic inheritance, knows that that conservative Christian theology is the one and only truth. And therefore, God is totally, acting within reasonable means to punish anybody that doesn't abide by Christian theology, which is odd. Then why do you have to go? If every human already knows everything they need to know, that Jesus is their one and true God, why do you have to go to Borneo or Java or Buddhist Thailand and try to find converts? But internal consistency is not the hallmark of conservative Christian thought. Both amongst the believers and amongst the theologians, they're riddled with inconsistency. But that is, how seeing that idea of saving people from hell and making sure people are not there is part and parcel of this mission outwork and why there's so much emphasis on it. There are, maybe I'll just kind of toss out there, there was a study done by the Public Religion Research Institute in 2014 that disaggregated Christian attitudes about climate change by race as well as religion. And it was quite surprising when everybody found out that the demographic group that has the highest level of climate change concern is Hispanic Christians in the United States. And that once you disaggregate evangelicals by race and Catholicism by race, you find that white Catholics are just as unconcerned, just as hostile to environmental values as white evangelicals. But many Hispanics are Catholic and have very high levels of environmental concern and especially climate change concern. And the best explanation of this is that there is a big, once you get to the south of the US-Mexico border, down to the tip of Patagonia, the citizenry of the entirety of South America, Central America, and Mexico all accept, the overwhelming majorities of their populations believe in and accept climate change science. So when those folks migrate to the United States, they bring a pre-existing acceptance of and concern about climate change. Interestingly, native-born Hispanic American Christians had about the same level of climate change concern as America generally. So the higher level, the reason why Hispanic Christians register so much higher is that the significant portion of American Hispanic Christianity are migrants that were born elsewhere.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Well, we have run out of time. I'm just so grateful for all of the presenters today, Evan, Dr. Zaleha, and Dr. Ortiz. Thank you for all of the attendees. I hope you found our, conversations and our curiosities and our, I say passions, like thought-provoking and invigorating for you all as well. So thank you for all of the questions and thank you for your presence today. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. And yeah, I will pause the recording now.